Well, hello there. It is great to see you again, and welcome back to another installment of Modern Wealth Management. I am your host and moderator, Ryan Ruff. And as always, we have our star of the show, Mr. Darrick Hutchins from Monon Wealth Management, joining us here today for another wealth management related discussion. That's what we do here on the show. Hey, in past episodes, Darrick and I have taken deep dives into the various aspects surrounding family wealth, family businesses, and all the intricacies that go into that. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a different angle towards family businesses and family wealth. Today, what we're acknowledging is these critical wealth planning mistakes of the successful family businesses. And the key word there is successful family businesses. These are the ones that have seen, various levels of success. They've scaled up, they've been able to reach different areas of the country, maybe even the world. So but what we're doing is we're carving out a little time to talk about these mistakes though that's holding them back maybe from that extra level of success, and really making an even larger impact in the world as we know it. So that being said, let's go ahead and bring Darrick on and get today's conversation rocking and rolling. Darrick, good to see you this morning. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for hosting us this morning.
No problem. Always a good time when we get together, man. Today we're talking about these critical wealth planning mistakes of successful family businesses. I think
Right.
it's safe to say, that it takes a lot of working hard and, of course, working smart, and then you got to navigate those family dynamics along the way, which I think we all know can be a little tricky sometimes, even with our own families. Um, but let's start here, kind of a high level overview, Darrick. Talk to me about just the overall need for wealth planning when it comes to family businesses. I think that's a good place for us to start. Why is it important for family businesses to just consider wealth planning in the first place?
Okay, well, I appreciate that question, Ryan. First of all, entrepreneurship, business ownership is tough. There's this really great post going around Facebook right now, or at least that's where I saw it on Facebook, that a lot of my business owner friends and clients have been kind of reposting, and it talks about um, the difficulty of being a small business owner or a business owner or an entrepreneur, depending upon who you are, and the effort that it takes, the stress that it puts on an individual, not only within the business but also within their personal life.
Hmm.
Now, you take that and then you combine that with a family dynamic, and we only see the complications multiply from there.
Sure.
But I think it's important, though, for the audience to understand just how important family businesses are to the U.S. economy. This morning, I pulled up a couple of statistics just in preparation for our show here. And
Hmm.
I found out that 60% of all the US workforce is currently employed by a family business.
Wow, that's awesome.
Think about
That's
that.
yeah, that's fantastic. Honestly, I mean, it makes you feel good about the mom and pop shops on the corner.
It
That's
is.
60%. That's awesome.
It is. And it goes further to say that, with everything that's been going on with socially, economically, politically, all the changes that we've gone through the pandemic, right now, family-owned businesses are responsible for creating 78% of all the new jobs in the United States.
Wow, wow.
So, it's 60% total, but that number is only growing from here.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean, that speaks volumes to the importance of the family business these days. Wow, 78%. That's awesome.
that's right. And when you add all this up, family-owned businesses are currently contributing more than half, 57%, to be exact, of the total US GDP. So out of everything that the United States produces,
Hmm.
57% of that is being produced by a family owned business. So, it's easy in a conversation like this for us to be thinking about, as you said, the small mom and pop shops. And certainly there are some of those that are very, very successful. But I think what the audience needs to understand is that these shops have gradually grown to be really the workforce of our US economy. And because of the challenges of not only entrepreneurship but blending in the family dynamics, it does create a significant need for what we call wealth planning. Most of these firms, when we think about, or most of these companies, these family owned companies, they're making decisions based upon multiple generations of that family.
Hmm.
Often the aim of the family business might be to ensure continuity, making sure that the business continues to thrive over time and over different generations. And with a primary goal for a lot of these owners of maintaining that family like control. So I say this to you because when you combine complexity with a huge need and a huge want of maintaining this continuity, it really lends itself well to the kind of work that we do.
Hmm. So I would imagine, though, given all those moving parts that you had mentioned, just within a business owner, entrepreneur, and all the juggles that they're having on a day to day basis, coupled with the dynamics, the family dynamics, of course, I think it's safe to say there's certainly a risk for mistakes. Talk to me about this risk and how that comes into the equation here.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's an opportunity for mistakes. I mean, so we've talked about the fact that these businesses have become larger,
Hmm.
therefore they have more stakeholders, right?
Mm.
Not only do
Yep.
they have the original owners, they have maybe the next generation in line. But remember, we just talked about that. What was it? 60%
Hmm.
of the workforce is involved with one of these companies. So the
Yeah.
success of this business is also really important to all those other families out there. They're stakeholders as well. And so, so that of course there, when you add importance and complexity, you obviously get a lot of opportunity to make some errors.
Sure. So Derek, when it comes to family business owners and really the decision makers for that given business, what should they be looking for in their wealth planner? Obviously we're taught we've acknowledged the need for wealth planning, but what should they be looking for in their wealth manager, their wealth planner, to ensure that there's a good fit there and the business itself can thrive, let alone the family itself?
Well, so this is probably the very first area that we see family businesses making a mistake,
Okay.
is that either they're not working with a wealth planner, or they're working with the wrong wealth planner.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, when we talk about wealth planning, what we're typically talking about is, combining strategies around investing, legal, taxes, and combining these together so that they really integrate in a synergistic manner, um, and just really all work together. And so, when what we see is that family businesses typically do a great job of finding people with technical expertise.
Hmm.
If they believe that they need some life insurance, they're typically really, really good at going out there and finding a great life insurance professional. If they have, everybody has to file taxes. I would say that most of the firms that I talk with are working with pretty good tax professionals, that are
Sure.
technically sound. They're putting good strategies together that
Hmm.
do minimize taxes for that family.
Hmm.
And so, you know, but what I miss here is that while most family businesses are out there and they're approaching technically technical experts that are really great at either a specific product or a specific solution,
Hmm.
what they're missing is that professional to come in and go deeper with them. and really uncover what is it that they really are trying to achieve.
Hmm.
Who is it that is really important? And bringing in, instead of just one strategy, bringing in a more client centric focus where the
Yeah.
focus isn't on any one particular strategy. The focus is on the family, the
Sure,
focus is
sure.
on the business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, think
There's
about how many times you've had a conversation with somebody, Derek, where they're listening, they're asking great questions, they want to get to know you and what makes you tick. I mean, you feel like they've got your best interests in mind, in addition to that technical experience, that expertise that you're bringing to the table. So I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying in our business, and that is a wealth planner who only has a hammer is going to see every problem
Yeah,
in their personal or a business as a nail.
sure.
Okay. That's just the way it goes. So if you bring in a technical expert on any one specific topic, I can promise you that they're going to come in and that's what they're going to attempt to implement.
Mhm.
So, what we really need to do is, instead of these advisors coming in, with a preconceived notion as to what it is that they're there to do with these cutting edge strategies. What we really want to see is our clients work with wealth managers who come in really with no agenda at all, other than to understand the situation and to try and move the ball forward based upon what that family business and those family owners are really looking to achieve.
Roger that.
We
So
we
there it
we
is.
call that the human element.
Okay, gotcha. And for our audience, I mean, Derek, you and I, we've taken a deep dive into what that human element
We
entails,
have.
really into the nitty gritty. So for anybody that's interested in more of this, there, you can of course check out a past episode of the podcast and dive into really what that human element entails. But Derek gave us a great high level overview there for you. Um, Derek, let's shift to maybe another mistake now. What's another big mistake? I mean, we talk about working with the right wealth manager. Okay, that's our first one. What's the next one that you see? Maybe within the relationship of the wealth manager. Or what are you seeing on this front?
Um, I would say that, just to continue to go down that way, picking out wealth planners who are less product oriented, and obviously more focused on providing those personal solutions.
Uh huh.
These professionals, they really should develop some deep insights into these families and into their situation. And of course, after you use the human element, after that has been um, implemented, the next thing is of course you have to have the highest quality expertise that's really available to address those family goals and pressing concerns. You know, I I have a lot of examples. You and I were talking before the show that I was
Hmm.
excited to do this because working with family businesses is the primary cornerstone of the business that I've created here. When
Hmm.
I think about my most successful clients, most of them were entrepreneurs in a family owned business, and
Yeah.
I got a chance to meet them through the planning for that business.
Hmm.
And just one that comes to mind. They great family on the east side of Indianapolis, own a manufacturing facility. And before I got involved, there was no shortage of professional technical expertise in
Hmm.
place. They had the best lawyers in town. They had the best tax attorneys in town. Um, you know, and they had actually spent quite a bit of money over the previous years before I got involved in
Hmm.
attempting to do some of these strategies. But unfortunately, while the strategies were technically sound,
Yeah.
they didn't line up with how the business currently operates.
Oh
They
wow.
didn't align with the core beliefs of the client.
Hmm.
And so therefore, believe it or not, nothing was ever implemented. There
Wow.
were a lot of professional fees paid, but nothing was ever actually done.
Mhm.
So what we did there is we just, we started from scratch. And ultimately, of course, we did bring back some of that technical expertise. That those it's not like those were all bad ideas. Matter of fact, we
Sure.
used a lot of them,
Yeah.
but we put them into the context of how the client actually wanted the planning to work, so that it not only worked for them, but it
Mhm.
worked for the business and it
Right.
worked for the next generation.
Yeah, no, that I mean, that makes all the sense in the world, Derek. So, and what was that relationship like once you started those discussions and getting to know that client on a deeper level and trying to find those solutions that make the most sense to them? What was their reaction to that process?
Well, I want to say that their reaction was good, but I think that the
Sure.
best thing that you can say is that at the end of the engagement, after going through the process, they came out of it with an estate plan that worked for them in the business, and that ultimately was implemented, as well as described and explained to all the heirs, so that everybody understood what was going on and that there was a clear path moving forward. So, it's great to say, "Oh, it was wonderful. We all sat around, sing kumbaya, hugged each other." That's great. But if nothing actually happens to move the ball forward, then what good is it?
Sure.
And so at the end of the engagement, I would say that the clients feel as though the wealth planning that they currently have in place is now aligned with who they are as people, what the business is and how it runs, and what they want for their heirs. And that's the most we can really hope for.
Absolutely. And Derek, one big thing that we talk about on this show, I mean, obviously it's just a facet of the overall wealth planning, picture and what you guys do for your clients. It's the idea of minimizing taxes, making
Mm.
sure the government doesn't take more than their fair share. I mean, this is a topic we've discussed a lot on this show. I would imagine that this is a big conversation of mitigating, and minimizing taxes overall. I would imagine that there's a mistake that successful family businesses are making when it comes to the taxes in particular. Do you have one that you might be able to mention for us today?
Well, yeah, I've got plenty of examples, but
Sure.
let's frame this up for a second.
Uh-huh.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, here we are. It's March 23, 2022. So we've got tax deadline right around the corner, but
Mhm.
for us as individuals, but corporate taxes have already been owed,
Right.
already due. They were due 8 days ago. And so, we're in this time period where everybody has an interest in reducing taxes. And for successful business owners, guess what? They're so successful that they pay the most taxes typically.
Mhm.
So, any kind of tax strategies that professionals, wealth managers, tax managers, whatever they can put in place has even a higher impact on these families, because a lot of them are high earners. So as we're going through this time period, hey, what are we going to do about taxes comes up a lot. And you know what, Ryan, there's a lot of things that we can do around taxes.
Sure.
We can restructure businesses to reduce or eliminate, even eliminate current income taxes.
Mhm.
You can restructure businesses to better manage risk, or even to transfer the business to the next generation at a lower cost basis. All of
Mhm.
these things are advantageous as it relates to mitigating taxes. Um, but with that being said, I'd say, one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people putting that mitigating taxes on the top of the list,
Mm.
and then realizing, oh, well, if I do that, then all of a sudden these other goals, the things that are really important to me, well, they're negatively affected.
Sure.
let me give you an example.
Please, that'd be great.
Great client of mine, good friend I've good friend I've had since high school, actually before then, but he's become a successful business owner, owns a couple different chains of restaurants and so forth. And you know what? He's been very successful. He's done very well, and he pays a lot of taxes. And he comes into my office a couple weeks ago and says, "Hey, I'm supposed to pay this great big tax bill, but here's a strategy that somebody has shown me where if I do this, then all of a sudden I get to reduce my taxes significantly, almost to the point of nothing."
Sounds great.
Does sound great, and I was
Hmm.
interested in it.
Sure.
And so I took the information from him, let him leave, and I spent some time decoding it and so forth.
Sure.
And what I let him know is that while it absolutely would, in fact, decrease the amount of taxes that he had, what it also did is put 100% of his wealth in the way of creditors, anybody that would have a legal obligation or
Uh,
problem with him.
uh-huh.
And it put so by mitigating these taxes, it gave him um, basically infinity amount of risk with the
Wow.
rest of his money. So congratulations, you saved a couple $100,000 of
Yeah.
taxes in 2022. But if something negative happens in 2023, they can get you for everything.
Sure. Sure.
Said, "Client, did you know that?"
Hmm.
"No, I would never do something like that." "Well, of course you wouldn't, but part of
Hmm.
my job is to make sure that we're not so focused on tax
Yeah.
mitigation that we're then putting the rest of your wealth really at risk." And that's
At
just a
risk.
perfect example of some that we've seen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a give and take there. Sure, it sounds great. 100% tax mitigation. Woo! I mean, anybody can get down with that. But
Right.
good to know that. Good to know that there's obviously there's a second variable at play there in that level of risk. A great example there, Derek. Kind of maybe let's shift to another critical wealth planning mistake you're seeing successful family businesses make. You mentioned this is the cornerstone of your business. You're doing it a lot with these guys. What's a third mistake that you're seeing, Derek?
Being secretive.
Oh,
Um,
okay,
we don't see this as often anymore as
okay,
what we used to. People have begun to open up a little bit, but there is still a group of people out there that believe, hey, my money is mine, and and it's not really polite to talk about money at the dinner table, right? I mean, that used to be
right,
something that the US hung their hat on,
sure,
you
sure.
know. And while it sounds great that, hey, we're going to be secretive, and the intentions of it are actually good,
Hmm.
so that way, the objective typically is to create and or maintain cohesion of the family,
Hmm.
not letting the heirs really concern themselves with what's coming next. It all
Sure.
sounds great, but it usually proves to be counterproductive.
Hmm.
What we
How
find
so?
is yeah, well, what we find is that making sure that all the heirs are in the know
Hmm.
and are really at the table, it actually lessens possible future conflicts.
Hmm.
You don't, the worst thing that you can possibly have is that once the business owner passes away, everybody has to gather around for the reading of the will to find
Right.
out whether or not they're in it,
And it's
right?
always a dramatic scene in the movie.
It,
You know,
it's a great movie scene. I don't know if
it
it
really
actually
is.
ever happened in real life, but it's a perfect movie scene.
Sure.
But it may not happen exactly like that, but what we actually find is that the kids just aren't in the know of what the long-term plans are for the business until really the the parents or the original owner is really getting close to getting out of the picture, whether that's because of
Mhm.
health or disability or,
Yeah.
retirement or whatever. It's like, hey, I didn't involve you in the conversation, but here's what I've decided to do.
Yeah.
Well, that may not work out for everybody else.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
You got to think. I mean, there are some children of successful business owners that are excited about carrying on the legacy of that
Mhm.
business and growing and expanding it. And there are others that would much rather just have the cash.
Sure. Sure. They've
It's
got
so much more productive to have these conversations while everybody's getting along, everybody's healthy,
sure.
and there's a plenty long runway so that we can make adjustments along the way. I'm just going to give you a great example that
Please.
literally happened over the last 12 months. Long-term clients have built a wonderful, wonderful business, very profitable, and continues to grow. Well, the founding owner had some significant changes in his life. He let's just say he decided that he didn't want to run the business anymore. And up to that point, his boys really hadn't they had been involved, but not never shown that they wanted to take over. Okay.
Mhm.
And so his thought was, hey, I've built this great business. It may be worth what, upward of $100 million. Certainly enough money to take care of him and the boys. Okay.
Sure.
Um, and and so the intention is, hey, the market's high, the private equity companies are after us, meaning in a good way.
Mhm.
Maybe this is a perfect opportunity for us to cash out and go do something else. And so by the time I got involved, the owner was pretty far down that path. He had met with investment bankers. He was talking to possible suitors to buy the business. They were
Wow.
negotiating pricing. Okay.
Wow. Knee deep in
And
that.
and it turns out once the boys got looped back in, well, what they actually wanted was a lot different than what their
Mhm.
dad thought they wanted. They
Okay.
not only wanted a larger piece of being involved in the business, they were looking forward and had plans drawn up to grow the business.
Oh boy. Wow. Talk about a
Okay?
disconnect. Oh my goodness.
And here's the thing. Nothing made this guy more happy than realizing his sons wanted to step up and take control of
He
this
just
thing
didn't
he had
know.
built. He didn't want to sell it.
Uh-huh.
It's just that up to that point, there'd been kind of a lack of communication
Sure.
as
Sure.
to how can this transaction go down. And like I
Mhm.
said, this was brought about by a significant change in his life, and I can
Mhm.
understand, how things go. But you asked me what's one of the problems we see. Hey, those conversations need to be had well in advance
Yeah.
and continually have them so that they can grow over time.
Mhm.
The old days of, hey, my money's mine and you'll know about it when it's yours.
Right.
That sounds good, but it does not in reality help us fulfill our goals.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a process of preparing the heirs for that day the inheritance comes. I mean, that's a fantastic example. I mean, what the patriarch wanted was what the boys wanted,
They were
and they
perfectly aligned, they just didn't
right.
know it.
Oh my gosh, you just got to talk. And that just goes back. I mean, Derek, we've talked about family businesses on this show so many times, but communication, man, it's always at the forefront of concern. And when it's not happening, that's when the issues are coming into play. So that's a great third mistake. That idea of being secretive about the wealth planning, there's no need for it anymore. Have these conversations, get them done early, make sure they're ongoing. Um, Speaking of the word ongoing, Derek, I know when you and I were
Yeah.
chatting before this episode, the idea of up to date, regular, ongoing maintenance, shall we say, when it comes to a
Mhm.
wealth plan. This is one that you tend to see. Talk about this, this idea of the fourth mistake that you're seeing families make.
Well, the process of good wealth planning does take some time. All right.
Sure.
It has to be
Sure.
well thought out. There has
Mhm.
to be plenty of technical expertise ultimately brought in after a
Yeah.
path is determined. And so it's not like it's a 30-minute visit to your CPA's office, right? It doesn't
No, no,
work out.
no.
It's not like that. And so,
Right.
because of the complexity, because of the amount of time and thought that it takes, what we see, the next problem that we see is that families, once they go through the process of wealth planning, they
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I've checked the box,
Right. It's
and
done. All done.
I
We're
have
good
now
here.
done my wealth planning, and so now I can get on to whatever is next."
Sure.
The reality is that. Um, Listen, I mean, I've been in this business now for well over 20 years. I've seen tax law changes, I don't know, at least 7 times. Um, and, certainly the economy, seems to change every couple of years, and we're never
Mhm.
real sure as to what it's going. But the other thing that happens is that family dynamics change,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you're dealing with different people, what they want out of life, well, that's ever evolving. I can just
Mhm.
tell you, what I want out of life today is different than what it was 10 years ago before I ever had children.
Right.
So, this is a moving target. And so, therefore, even when you have a great wealth management plan built, there needs to be a systematic process put in place, not haphazard,
Mhm.
systematic, so that it's constantly being evaluated to make sure that it represents what we're actually trying to do and represents what the current state of possibilities are.
Sure. So Derek, in that instance, like let's say we have an instance of a family like that. They did their wealth planning, right? And it got done in their mind, wasn't
Yep.
necessarily accurate, up to date, ongoing. What should a family then do if they find themselves in a situation where their plan is outdated and it's time to get back to the drawing board because circumstances have changed?
Well, I mean, if you've already realized that the plan is out of date because
Hmm.
something's changed, well, at that point, that's an easier situation, really.
Right,
If
right.
you can say, "Hey, this is the way that the business was designed to go to the heirs equally," or whatever, and now all of a
Hmm.
sudden, uh, let's say something really terrible. Maybe one of the heirs has passed away, predeceased his parents. Okay,
Mm.
that'd be a terrible
Okay.
situation,
Absolutely.
but it would certainly be a time where a client would go ahead and raise their hand and say, "Hey, I can acknowledge and I can see that we have a problem."
Sure.
And if that happens, then you just have to go back to the drawing board and make some adjustments. What we see
Hmm.
even more often than that, though, Ryan, is that people don't understand that there's an issue.
Mm.
If you own a business and you that's worth, let's just say, 5 million bucks, and you do your wealth planning around the business when it's 5 million, and then 20 years later, let's not even go 20, 10 years later, because of hard work and a little bit of luck, it's now worth 50 million.
Wow.
Your planning is out of date.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Okay. All of a sudden, the assumptions that you made around taxes, inheritance, ongoing continuity, the
Yeah.
cash out potential,
Sure.
all of those things need to be reevaluated and put in context as to what current tax laws are. You know,
Hmm.
here we are in 2022. It's hard for me to believe that we haven't had any tax reform over
Right.
the last 15, 16 months, but we
Hmm.
haven't. But at some point, we're going to.
Sure.
Right now, we have an extremely high federal estate tax exclusion. Well, it's scheduled to come down, And with the stroke of a pen, it could come significantly down.
Mhm.
Well, these are things that need to be evaluated because if your business has been growing and now all of a sudden the tax impact, the tax laws have changed. Well, this is the signal that hey, we need to reevaluate the plan and see what's going on. That's just one example. Other examples could be new grandkids in the picture, new business opportunities. You had one business and it's got a side venture. What am I going to do with that side venture? All of these are opportunities to reevaluate the plan, make sure that the core of it is still in line with the core fundamentals of that family, and that the integrity of the plan as it relates to the laws and the
Mhm.
opportunities that exist in this marketplace are
Mhm.
really best in class.
Yeah, yeah. So four big mistakes right there that we've gone through. The idea of making sure you work with the right wealth managers, got your goals and interests in mind. Derek, you had mentioned that over focus on taxes, mitigating taxes, because hey, that plan's going to come with some consequences, and let's make sure that those don't completely put you at risk.
Yeah.
The third being just really taking a look and making sure that you're not being secretive about the wealth planning, communicating. That was a great example. The dad wanted the sons to be involved in the business. Of course, they wanted to as well. That's a fantastic example. And then fourth here, just that idea of keeping wealth planning up to date. Derek, let's round out our episode here today. The big number five. What is the fifth and final, critical wealth planning mistake that you're seeing family businesses make these days?
This is a big one.
Okay.
And one of the largest mistakes that I see is that the family views the sale of the business as
Hmm.
somehow failing in some way. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I've got
There's
a, I've got a, I've got a great story. I've got a client
please.
that he, um, he inherited his business from his father, who his father ran the business until he was 85 years old. And then the son, who at that point was now 60, 65,
Wow.
began running the business.
Wow.
And his son, so now the third generation, is coming up
Yep.
behind and is an integral part of the business.
Hmm.
Um, with every intention no of carrying on this legacy and this family owned business, just being passed from generation to generation. Well, they happen to be in a business that over the last couple of years has exploded in price.
Okay.
And so, just to use, maybe some numbers, 10 years ago, maybe the business was worth 10 million.
Hmm.
And sure enough, they have a private equity firm that approached them for upwards, just a few years later, closer to 50 million.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. And we're really talking about life changing money here.
Hmm.
And as I consulted with um, the owner, of course he knew he should take the money.
Sure.
All right. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, he
How can
told
you
me
not?
this buyer is completely overpaying for this.
Wow.
It's he goes, I don't know what they're thinking.
It's a no-brainer.
It was almost like we weren't so sure it was real.
Sure, sure.
Even then, he was hesitant to pull the trigger. Why? Because of his son.
Mhm.
He wanted to, think about this. He had
Yeah.
inherited it from his father. He had
Right.
run it, and then he was going to pass it on to his
Yeah.
son.
There's generational value
And
here.
there was truthfully, I mean, it took some real soul searching to decide what they should do or what they wanted
Mhm.
to do.
Yeah.
He did view it as, hey, if I sell the business in some way, I've failed. In this office that I'm sitting right now, I looked across the table at him and I said, "You've won. You haven't failed. You won.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
let's go win at something else.
I love that. I love that. I mean, that is life-changing money. It's what you said. I mean, you could do anything with that and go win at something. Perfect, perfect. And what was his reaction to that, Derek?
It was speaking truth.
Hmm.
He knew it was true. He just needed somebody to tell him. He
Yeah.
needed the permission slip because, listen, I mean, money isn't everything. We know that.
Sure.
Okay. We get emotional ties to money. We get emotional ties to our business.
Yep.
We get emotional ties to inanimate objects. I mean, all kinds of different crazy
Sure.
stuff, right?
Sure.
So sometimes, you just need an outside counsel to say,
Yeah.
you've won.
Hmm.
You haven't lost. And as a matter of fact, he was going into telling me how running this business his whole life, what it had cost him, not financially, but
Hmm.
personally.
Sure.
The turmoils of the ups and downs and the sleepless nights and so forth. And yet he couldn't wait to pass that on to his son.
Right. Right. So
And
funny and how backwards that is. You
and
know.
so yet when we reframe it like that, say, you didn't lose. You
Hmm.
won.
Hmm.
This is it. You've hit the goalpost. And now, of course, you get to do more for your son than you ever would have by passing this business along.
Right. Right.
And he can go chase whatever's next for him.
The freedom for decision making and opportunity chasing is, yeah, I mean, the world is your oyster at that point, and that's no,
Right.
that's a fantastic example.
So I would say I want to conclude with that because
Mhm.
so many different family businesses, especially, get an emotional attachment to that business, which is great. That's probably
Yeah,
why it's been so successful.
right.
But um, but that also can be, constricting
Mhm.
to the future possibilities that you and your family can have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Derek, we've covered a lot in terms of these. There's a lot to unpack within each of these mistakes that you see family businesses making. And again, these are the successful family businesses, the mistakes
Yep.
that they're making. That's it. That is important to call out because I mean they've achieved a level of success, but they're still making these little mistakes that can hold them back that much more. Derek, let's say somebody out there in our audience, this today's conversation is resonating with them. Maybe they even have a family business of their own, and
Hmm.
let's say maybe they're interested in reaching out to you and your team just to talk just about their own unique circumstance. Maybe they've got a particular thought on their mind. Maybe even they're making one of these mistakes and they want to get your feedback on it. What would you say is the best way they could reach out to you and your team and maybe just open up a dialogue?
Well, the best way, by far and away, the best way to reach out to us is to give us a call here at the office. Look us up online. We're mononwealth.com. We have our phone number on there. We've got our an info email if you prefer to email to us. And what I want you to know is that there's no preconceived notions here as to what it is that you want to do. I don't know which of these mistakes, if any, you're making up to this point. What we want to do is have an honest conversation with you about, where you're at today. Where is it that you and your business are trying to go? And what kind of unique planning opportunities could we put together to ensure that that happens?
Mhm.
Uh, that's the work that we do. And, working with family businesses has been a core specialty of mine for the majority of my career. And it's definitely something that I have enjoyed doing.
Sure, sure. Well, Derek, look, I appreciate you carving some time out of your busy day. You have a company to run, you got clients to treat, and
I do. I got
you
my
know,
own family business to run.
exactly, exactly. So we'll let you get back to doing that. But look, hey, again, thanks for carving some time out to be with us here. Dive into these mistakes, and wish you the best, and looking forward to having you back on the next one.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Of course. Hey, look, and as always, we want to take one final moment. Thank you guys, our audience, right, for jumping aboard, being with us on the conversation and the episode today. If you took anything away from it, go ahead and hit that like button, comment on the show, subscribe to it, of course, on whichever platform you're checking us out on today, and then share this information, right? Hit that share button. Let friends, family, business owners know we've got a show full of great stuff for them. These are the same context, conversations, strategies, solutions. These are the same conversations that Darrick is having with his clients over at Monon Wealth Management, and we're bringing them right here to you guys on this show. We've got some great stuff teed up for you in future episodes that we would hate to have you miss out on. So for Mr. Darrick Hutchins, I'm Ryan Ruff. We're going to go ahead and say so long, but we appreciate you guys being with us on today's installment of Modern Wealth Management.